We did that.
It's a nice result.
Eric had.
I know.
Oh, you skipped over it. Well, he gets.
You know, it's like a big project. Thought about density of housing. Thought about-
He gets it.
Very nice. Said everything was
Yeah.
Actually, might be a little less traffic.
Oh, that's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, but all right, call the meeting to order.
No, the
Donuts, we have multiple selections, donuts over there. I already-
Apple cider, apple coffee.
So let's call the October 2023 meeting to order. Welcome new Albany County Commissioners, Carolyn McLaughlin here.
She's not here.
And not here, okay. She is going to be joining our team. We'll move on to the acceptance of the June 21st, 2023 meeting. Okay, I have a first.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Financial statements. Mark?
Sure.
Take the lead.
So through September 30th, we're tracking at, on the revenue side, 67% the budget and 65% on the expense side. Funds would be 75%. We are in the process of finalizing our Q3 billings to these funding agencies. But preliminary numbers have been booked, so our revenues do reflect receivables from that Q3 billing. You'll note on the profit and loss statement that our interest revenues have increased, and that's primarily due to our investment of $100,000 into the NICLAS funds. So instead of earning pennies on the dollar, we're now making pretty good interest money, $500, $800 a month in interest. What rate is it? What's that? It's 5%. Hence the donuts.
That's 24 instead of just 12.
And if that's variable based on interest rate.
Right now, it's fixed. Joe hit us to the NICLAS investment from his experience with it at the town of Charlton. But right now, it's a very favorable interest rate, and we can withdraw our money without penalty. So it's very flexible.
Right now it's at 5.2.
5.2.
Fluctuates.
What bank is that with?
That's with a program called NICLAS. So it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
special investment fund
Through the state controller's office.
for state entities, state local governments. So through September 30th, we have about $360,000 in the bank and $260,000 in receivables. But we're in a good cash position, and we're a pretty good situation in terms of our tracking to budget. Any questions?
All right, with that, can I get a motion? So board second. All in favor?
Aye.
Move on to the 2022 audit presentation.
Yes, with us here, we have Heather Lewis from the newly branded MMB & Co. And they have been our auditing firm for a number of years, and happy to have Heather here to walk us through our audit. Do you want me to bring anything up on the screen, or you just want to verbally go over it, or
I
how?
can verbally go through it.
Okay.
That works. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the financial statements, give you just high level summary of some things different this year and what our audit report is. So if we turn to page 1 of the financial statements themselves, that's for the independent. And right at the top, it lets you know what our opinion is and that we've audited the commission's financial statements.
Yeah, let me just, actually, let me bring it up on the screen because I don't know that it's in the package.
No,
it's not.
I thought I thought I
was
had
wondering.
it,
I think I got separate email.
It was a separate attack.
but I thought I printed it.
You did,
Yeah.
I did?
yeah, that you have the nominating committee in front of it,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just have it.
in mine anyway.
Well, I'll bring it up regardless.
Okay. I thought I had it.
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay, okay.
Oh, there you go.
It's after the nominating committee.
Yeah, I just put it in the wrong part in there. Sorry.
Now we're over here.
A little
All
bit.
good.
Yes, will it? Okay. It'll come up in my quarterly.
Yeah, I don't know if the statements are in there, but they're the long letters.
Yeah, I'll put the.
She says.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, if we go to the
It's an
audit.
entry.
She does that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so right at the top there, it lets you know what our opinion is, and that we believe the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects and accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that's that unmodified opinion, clean opinion, highest level of assurance that we can provide. And the basis for opinions, it lets you know that we have to follow certain standards, including government auditing standards, we're required to be independent, be ethical, all of that. And we believe everything we've done is sufficient to provide a basis for our opinion. Then the next paragraph is your change in accounting principles. You did have to implement a new standard, GASB 87 related to leases, as well as GASB 96, which didn't have any impact on you, but we're required to just go ahead and implement that. It doesn't modify our opinion, and I'll go through what that is, but basically, we no longer just disclose your leases, we now report them on a lease year statement. So we'll go through what the change is. And responsibilities of management, just responsible for making sure the financial statements are correct, that they have good internal controls in place, and they monitor those controls throughout the year. Page 2 continues on with, you know, what our responsibility is as the auditors, and we have to obtain reasonable assurance that your statements are materially correct. We have to maintain professional skepticism, use our professional judgment, identify areas of potential material in the statement, and design our audit procedures appropriately there. Get an understanding of your internal controls. We don't give an opinion on them, but we do get that understanding. Look at your accounting policies, and then we communicate everything back to you, which is what everything on that section is. Page 3 just lets you know that there is some required supplemental information that the standards required through management discussion and analysis, some of the schedules in the back. They don't give any opinion on those, but they're just required to be included in your statements. And then we have a report in accordance with government auditing standards that we'll go through as well. So all of that is very standard language. And then we have the MD&A, which I was going to skip past and go to page 7 of your hard copy of the statement of position. This is really a more about, more of a long-term focus.
Part of it.
So it includes long-term assets, long-term liabilities.
That's not in the packet.
And here, the new standard, we have under non-current assets, we have that new line, lease assets net for 98,000. And then in your liability section, you'll see a short-term lease liability and a long-term lease liability as well as your interest. They almost offset each other, but basically you had to report the asset now as a leased asset with a goods like a building and a copier. And then you had to show liability that you have to pay that lease in the future. So your at least asset and lease liability almost offset. Not really a significant change for your organization, but it was a new standard you were required to implement. So that's the only thing that's really a little bit different this year than you would have seen in prior years. Okay, and then I was just gonna skip right on back to, it's page 26. I'm not sure what page is in the PDF. It's the budget to actual.
This office space is only leak.
And the copy
And the
machine.
copier. Yeah, the office space being the larger piece. Okay, so budget to actual, I always like to just show you have a positive variance. So your revenues came in more than you had budgeted and your expenses came in less than you had budgeted. So you have that positive variance of 111,000, which is always, what you want to see. You want to see that, that positive number, there. And then if we go to the next audit report, so the next thing on letterheads is a previous tab. Right there. So this is our report on internal control for financial reporting. So we have to get that understanding of your internal controls as part of our audit process. It gives you some definitions of what a deficiency is, and concludes that we did not identify any deficiencies in your internal controls. So again, no concerns with the internal controls there. And then on the top of the next page, lets you know that we also have to consider your compliance with any significant laws and regulations. And again, we had no instances of non-compliance to report. So again, that's a clean report, no concerns there either. So that's the financial statements. The letter that is in your packet, this is just a required communication letter. And basically, what it reiterates is that, we didn't have any, material journal entries that we recorded. We implemented a new standard. You have some estimates in your financial statements. We believe the estimates are reasonable, but it's all very standard communication in there as well. Basically just lets you know that we had a good audit and that there were no concerns to bring to your attention. And there's no management letter, so again, no internal control recommendations or anything like that in that area either. Any questions?
Well, thank you, Heather, and thank you to Amy, Tom, our financial officer, program directors, Todd Bozy. It takes a team to make sure we're all doing things appropriately, and we have oversight, so it's not just one person responsible for the clean audit. It's all of us. So thank you, Amy. I just want to point out for the folks here in the room, the net cost of services, which I don't know where it is. Here we go. So net cost of services, this is really taking a look at how much did it actually cost the counties versus how much benefit did they derive in terms of our services. So the counties derived 1.279 million in services, but it only cost them $43,000. So that is a pretty good return on investment for our counties. And something that is not as easy to highlight as our sort of every county dollar gets leveraged by $5 of outside revenue. But from our audit perspective, this is a pretty powerful, sort of underlying.
Could you explain that again, like what the delta is, where that source of funding for that delta and how it's.
I would love to explain it, but I'm going to ask Heather to explain it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Really what that's showing you is that you're charging for services and you're receiving various grants and various funding. So that is really the piece, the delta there is really mostly grants that you're receiving that are funding the services that you're performing, and then you're charging for some of those services.
Okay, so those are services that are directly, how do we track those services as being of benefit to our counties? What are those? What's in that category of services?
So those are all the grant
all the
revenues
areas?
and the fee for services. So in terms of our revenue for last year, that 1.2 is all the grant and other fees for service revenue that we bring in. That's not our county appropriation. Some of the county funds are used to match the grant dollars that we come in. And there's some sort of mathematical equation that helps us arrive at that $43,000 number.
But all the work that the planning commission does constitutes services. Is really what I'm
Right.
asking.
Yep.
Okay. That's.
Any other questions? Again, thanks to the staff, clean audit is what we're looking for.
Give me a copy.
Yeah.
To follow up on that chart. Administering these federal and state grants is not easy. Let's say if your counties or local communities would try to accept these grants themselves, they might not have the expertise or the staff people who are able to or knowledgeable enough to continue to administer the various challenges of federal money and state money. So thanks to the team. And so this is memorandum 2314, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Just so that is to accept the audit. Can I have the first, please?
So second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to the appointment of a nomination committee.
Sure. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Heather, for your work.
Thank you. So we do this every year at the October board meeting. We appoint a nominating committee whose charge it is to develop a slate of officers that we can elect at the next appropriate meeting. This year is one of the years where we have reappointments at the counties. So Saratoga County members' appointments expire on December 31st, as does appointments from Albany County. So in those years, we typically have to wait until after the county's organizational meetings, at which they make the appointments for the following year, to actually vote on the officers. So while the work of the nominating committee would start now, we likely will not be able to elect a slate of officers until our January 2024 board meeting. So the task of the nominating committee is typically just confirming that the existing officers would like to move up to the next position up, and to find a replacement for the chair's role for Schenectady County, and to get a new volunteer to step into the secretary treasurer role. So it's not a heavy lift, but we do need a committee established, and the committee is typically appointed by the chair and confirmed by the board.
Anybody interested? Better call names out.
That usually works better.
Yeah. Who's helped in these efforts in the past? I can't be the chair, right?
I was gonna say, I've helped in the
I think
past.
so, Judy. You're the first one I was gonna call out.
But that's fine.
And then typically to do, does the chair participate in this?
There's no restriction on the chair.
I would be happy to participate as well. Do we need one more?
I'll help out. As you, in the past.
Terrific.
So the candidates for the committee are David Hopekamp, Judy Bressler, and Craig Warner.
Don't we need somebody from Schenectady County also?
I'm Schenectady.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We've just left off Albany
Albany,
County.
okay,
I'll volunteer.
Okay,
Terrific.
Oh, right, Willie.
There we go.
but we won't do
Painless.
anything until the January meeting.
well, I would prepare a slate of officers
Yeah.
between now and the end of the year,
Okay,
just knowing that we may not be able to act on it until January.
all right.
I'm sure there's some communication back and forth if we're expecting reappointments or
Mhm.
some stuff, so we'll keep that in mind.
We need a motion to nominate the nominating committee.
A motion to appoint the nominee.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
No,
Second.
And there's a second, all in favor? All right, the nomination committee is appointed or nominated.
You got it.
All right, let's move on to the DEC 604B Water Quality Planning Grant.
Great. I know it's a really compelling title, but it's an important program. So this program funds our water quality outreach work. Our work has historically included source water protection plans, technical assistance to county, other county organizations. And we submitted a new work plan for the upcoming 3-year term, and we were awarded $87,000 a year for the program, which is an increase of $33,000 over our previous allocation. This increase in funding will allow us to bring on another full-time equivalent employee that will work between the water quality programs and our other programs that are funded by the Capital District Transportation Committee. The tasks, I've included, just some basic tasks that we will accomplish in the next iteration of the program. But by and large, they will include continuation of our drinking source water protection planning assistance, assistance with MS4 regulations, and general local and regional watershed planning. The match requirement for this program was reduced from 10% to 5%, so that results in more revenue coming our way. And board action is requested to accept the grant.
So moved.
Second, any questions, comments? The extra 33,000, did we apply for additional funding or?
We applied for $100,000 this year. The strategy was really, we're spending a lot less on the CSO program. Martin Bailey is only working part-time on that program. And we really need to piece together some funding sources to be able to have enough money to bring on another full-time employee.
So will Martin still continue to be part-time on?
Yeah, he'll continue to be part-time in the CSO, and the CSO corporation pays for his time.
All right. We have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. And we are moving on. So accept climate pollution reduction grant.
Right. Well, this is another major grant. The board authorized us to make the application back in the spring. Todd Bozy led the effort to develop the application and was successful at receiving or being awarded the $1 million grant from the EPA. There are many different sort of components to this program. There's no match requirement for it. And we'll hear more about the program from Todd later on in terms of how CDRPC is rolling out the program. This continues to build on CDRPC and Todd Bozy's sort of successes in this space, leveraging the expertise and reputation for our administration of the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities Program and the DEC's Climate Smart Communities Program. This now role maps in the federal government and the work that we've been doing with the state government and working to create synergies between the federal programs and the state programs, and sort of how sort of a role our organization is also playing to make those coordination things happen. So anyway, the board action is requested to accept this $1 million grant, and then Todd will talk about the rollout a little bit later.
All right, so we'll learn a little bit more about the program later. May I have a first?
Make motion.
I'll second.
And Judy is the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, another grant here from the EDA planning grant.
Right, this is another multi-year grant. And while we did not receive an increase in our allocation here, the $70,000 we receive annually for this planning grant is still valuable. This next iteration of our partnership with the EDA will carry us through for the next 3-year term. This board just adopted our comprehensive economic development strategy, I believe in the spring or at the June meeting. And the next iteration of our planning grant with the EDA will be focused on tasks that will essentially implement our economic development strategy and assist communities making applications to the EDA and to other organizations. So it's over the course of 3 years, it basically nets to $210,000 to CDRPC. And I'd like to thank Kate Maynard for wrestling all the federal paperwork requirements together to get the application in.
Lots of fun.
It's so much fun. But is there any questions on the EDA grant? And if none, we need a motion, a second to accept the grant. This grant comes with a $1-for-$1 match obligation.
So it's portion case time for 3 years.
Right.
Completion of it is an annual economic development plan submission.
No, we'll have to do the SEDS every 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Mhm.
And then it allows local communities to identify projects to apply for EDA funding, correct?
Right. We try to position our economic development strategy in such a way that any priority project identified in the region will be consistent with it, we will be supported by it so that they can apply and be more competitive for federal funding.
So I'm a little slow this morning. So the $1-for-$1 match, is that coming from funds already budgeted by the commission, or did we go out and seek those match funds from localities?
It comes from our county allocations.
It does, okay.
Yep. So,
So we're matching.
right.
Got it.
Are in-kind services part of the funding?
So in-kind services are not part of the funding, but you know, the counties basically have to fund $70,000 every year. And we get $70,000 from the EDA to collectively fund our economic development work.
Any other questions? Have a motion?
Move to accept.
Second. Second by Gary, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Budget modification memo.
Right, we went through the profit and loss. I said we were doing pretty good, but here we have a budget modification request. The main thrust of this request is so that we can upgrade our network server. Our network server is approaching the end of its life cycle. Microsoft will no longer maintain the software that's running our server, and it was recommended by our IT consultants that we replace the server. The quote that we have from our IT consultants come in at just under $10,000. And this will allow us to not only invest in the hardware for a new server, but it will include the software. And finally, a server cage that will fit into our closet to keep our server and other peripherals secure. But while I was opening up the budget to make this request of $10,000, adding it to the computer supplies and software line, I did take it as an opportunity to true up our budget to reflect our actuals. I mean, I don't think we had to do it, but just because I know more about what our actuals will look like, I decided to take the opportunity to adjust some of the lines. So on the revenues side, you'll notice an adjustment miscellaneous. That just increases by a little bit and includes money that we received from a grant for the Future Leaders in Planning Program. And the FTZ line is increased to reflect revenue for our new FTZ operator from Schenectady, who shall remain nameless.
So who's supplying the actual software?
The software,
Yeah.
so our consultant firm gets a pretty good deal directly from Dell to buy the hardware, and they will also be installing Windows Server 2022, which is the new platform that Microsoft uses. It's sort of the industry standard for Office servers.
How old is the current server?
They went in 2017.
I heard it was one of Mark's first actions.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, before I came here, I would ask Rocky where the file was, and he'd hand me a hard copy folder.
I know.
Right. We had a bookshelf.
So are you getting this under government contract?
So what we will
Through
do,
Dell?
we have an account with Dell, and they have an account with Dell. So usually our process is to find out which one's cheaper.
I just went through this with the city.
Mhm.
It took us 3 months to get, and somebody to return our calls and actually work through the process. Then I've had to go buy the go out and buy the program without the government contract, because it took so long to try to communicate with somebody through the government. It just was a fiasco.
Well, working under our government account with Dell has not been a
No, it's
positive
not.
experience.
It's not.
Awful.
I have the
So,
same problem.
so we have sometimes relied on our IT consultants to take care of it rather than spend our time to try to figure out the government
That's
stuff.
just what I had to do.
That was.
We do have a backup on the cloud. That's what we discussed.
Right. Yeah, we upgraded our internet speed to be a 50-50 line, so 50 megabytes down, 50 megabytes up, and that allows us to back up our essential files on our server on the cloud. But obviously our office, we do require an office server for a couple of software programs, including GIS and our accounting software, which is an install on the server versus you can have QuickBooks Online, but we prefer the install on the server, so all the files are backed up and get secure. Additional expense side amendments, our audit and legal expenses were going to be a little bit higher. Books and journals are a little bit higher than anticipated. Meeting expenses, these costs represent costs for the Future Leaders in Planning Program that were booked on that line. Workers' comp reflects the increased cost of that line, and unemployment insurance, as many of us know, have been increasing over the past couple of years. So this just brings it closer to what we would think the actual would be. So the board action is requested to make these budget modifications. I will say about the 10,000 for the new server, it's above our capitalization threshold. I think I noted this in the memo. So while it says in this year's budget, $10,000 on the expense side, we'll actually capitalize the expense and depreciate it over the term of the depreciation schedule for that kind of hardware.
Are there any critical dates we have to meet on this? I mean, as far as the hardware and software we're running now, we're okay, right? So we're not pushed to the wall on anything here.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's urgent, but Microsoft will no longer support updates to Server 2012. They will stop it before the end of this year.
If there's a problem, it's toast.
Mhm.
And with,
Okay.
and therefore opens up some vulnerability.
Yes.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, so just on the budget amendment, Mark, so getting down to the bottom, so before the budget was projected usage of fund balance of 9240, and now we're projected to add the fund balance of 6125.
Right.
Before reconciliation at the end of the year. Okay.
All right, may I have a motion, please? Second by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, just, I think it's the meeting schedule for the end of the year, Mark.
Right, the ANF committee suggested that perhaps December 20th is a little too bit feeling in the holiday season that week to have a meeting, so they suggested moving it up 1 week to December 13th. So we just need a,
Any objections to that?
No.
All right, I have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Gary, thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
That's the idea.
So, Mark, will that allow us to have the new slate of officers in place then for January 1st?
potentially, it really depends on the preferences of the counties. So if I reach out to somebody from Saratoga or Albany and say, well, we may have some different appointments, so we'd like you to wait until our organizational.
Yeah, I was thinking more about the slate of chair, chair, second chair. Okay.
Mhm. We might have the slate identified,
Okay.
but sometimes if there is a person on that in the slate
Yeah.
that is up for reappointment, the county just wants the hold in place.
Yeah, understood. But wouldn't that be our intent would be to try to have everybody in a slot by January 1st?
Yes, that would be our intent to have the names and the positions.
Okay.
So we could have tentative people.
Right,
And then if they're pulled for some reasons, then I would say the committee would need to reconvene.
mhm,
Is that right?
I think so. I think that's right.
All right, we had a vote on that. I think we're all set, so we'll move on to Todd's presentation on the climate pollution reduction grant.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yep.
Todd?
I'll sit over here, so I'm not mind, you don't mind. You can see everybody from here. Yeah. So I'll just give you a summary of kind of how we're kicking things off here. So the contract started in August. And it's been launched for 4 years. So we have a detailed work plan that's been approved. And we're driven by the way EPA wants this to happen. I don't know if we were going to be doing a climate action plan for the region. We'd be doing it exactly the way EPA is requiring it, but we are forced to do it in 2 phases. So the way that we're rolling this out is pardon the acronyms, we have a PCAP and a CCAP. And so we have a priority climate action plan that we're doing that's due in 6 months. So it's due in March 1st. Very short timeline to pull that all together for an 8-county area. We propose that it fit the REDC region rather than just the census defined MSA area. And then we have another year after that, or really a year from this summer, to be able to, to this coming summer, another year to be able to do a comprehensive climate action plan. So we have a priority climate action plan and then a comprehensive climate action plan. If it wasn't driven in that fashion, we would just be doing a 2-year planning process. But to have this short-term plan done by March 1st, we have to really be strategic in how we're going to do this to meet the objectives of what's being asked for, because it's simultaneous to a grant implementation program just announced. And the idea being that communities can apply for this implementation grant phase. And in order to do so and be competitive, they have to point to our PCAP and point to how it fits in our PCAP and it fits into the strategies we're developing. And so we're doing kind of those things simultaneous. We're rolling it out basically in this way. We're starting with regional partners and we're prioritizing certain sectors. So in a climate action plan, we base it off of a greenhouse gas inventory, which sets a baseline for each of the different sectors, for the residential sector, the transportation sector, the waste sector, the ag sector, the chemical sector, the industrial sectors. We have these different sectors we've documented already in a previous inventory. And we're allowed to utilize that in this first phase. In the second phase, in the comprehensive phase, we're going to do a whole new inventory. And I'll speak on that in a second. So we're focusing on residential and transportation in this first phase. So we have met, starting with the Capital Region Transportation Council down the hall here. That's our first partner. And essentially what we've done is develop a tool, a spreadsheet tool that allows our plan to be a container for what everyone's doing in the region already. So our idea isn't to come and impose something on the region or to say, this is what we're doing, or to start from scratch. It's to say, we're doing a lot of good things in this region that have an impact on reducing greenhouse gases, which is the focus of this program, and air pollution in primarily greenhouse gas reductions, mitigation planning. And so we met with the Transportation Council and we provided them this tool. We had a long meeting with them, and then they're going through their transportation plan, pulling out their strategies that have carbon reduction impacts, promoting walkable communities, promoting transit, these kinds of things. And they're populating this spreadsheet, and then they're going to give it back to us. And we're going to put that together and how we develop our strategies for that sector. And we're also asking them to look at some metrics, because we need to track how this is going to, these strategies will affect the greenhouse gas reduction over time. We intend to develop a greenhouse gas dashboard. We're already starting to work on that, and we're also including Maddie in the sustainability team for this, our GIS person, and working off existing inventory to develop this template of a greenhouse gas dashboard. And we're proposing that then CDRPC houses that dashboard over time and develops it into a way in which any community can go online on our website, go to that page, look up their community, see what their sector breakdowns are for their carbon footprint, and track the kind of projects and steps they're doing to reduce it. So then going back to the next step, we've met already with the Transportation Council. Then we met with CDTA and the bus agency, and we're doing the same thing with them. So now they're putting into the tool the kinds of steps their goals are already established in their own climate action plan. They want to promote electric buses. They want to have more wide reach of electric buses, and they want to promote just more bus riders. And they're inputting that into the strategy, and we're going to get that back from them along with their metrics. And then we met with what's called the Clean Energy Hub team through the Affordable Housing Partnership of Albany. They have a grant with NYSERDA, and they've created a coalition of groups that work on housing, especially focusing on disadvantaged communities, and doing the same thing with them, but now on the residential sector. We have a meeting today with a group of municipalities that we'll call them climate leaders, that have done climate action planning, and they're a cross section of different community types, to pull from their climate action plans or initiatives, their strategies to make sure that they fit within this. So really just, again, creating a container that's in sync with what everybody is doing. And then simultaneous to getting those strategies in place, we are working with each of those groups to identify a potential large project that this region could get behind, or multiple projects. The grant solicitation phase that runs parallel to this, that we have to point to our PCAP, is due in April, 1 month after our PCAP is due. So we kind of got to do these things simultaneously. And when we look at the funding the federal government is putting behind this, which is essentially around $5 billion, $4.7 billion, something like that, and the grant sizes, the low end is 2 million and the high end is $500 million. That's the kind of grant. So it's not a whole bunch of small grants. Those are the kind of grants we're supporting through NYSERDA's Clean Energy Community Program. But these are really larger transformational grants. And when you look at the money and you look at all the states and the competitive nature of this, we're probably going to get 2 grants in this state. That's my guess. So we're trying to figure out a marquee kind of project that we can get behind, and we're just soliciting that right now and trying to work that through. We just met with a group with the city of Albany and with some geothermal developers and engineering firms, and the housing authority is looking at various geothermal projects around several neighborhoods in Albany, trying to tie them together to multiple different buildings and potentially tap off wasted heat that comes from the Capitol and from Empire Plaza and goes into the Hudson, and also sewage where you can tap energy from that and to go into a geothermal system. We don't know if that's going to emerge as the project. It's a little complicated, but the city of Albany seems behind it. We'll see what else emerges. We think CDTA may have some kind of a bus project, and any municipalities that have ideas, we're going to be soliciting them. We just put out an e-blast this past week to that effect and announcing this project, and for any community to contact me, we can start to talk through the kind of project. So we'll be rolling this out in those 2 phases. The first phase just kind of we're flying forward in a 6-month planning process, so simultaneously looking for a grant. And I should note that each state got this grant too. So the way that the EPA rolled this out is they said the top most populous MSAs in the region, and they cut it at 67, I believe, to start, would be qualifying for this $1 million. But every state would qualify also for $1 million grant. And so so New York State also is doing this. Rochester region got a grant, Buffalo region got a grant, and the New York City region got a grant. So there were 4 regions in the state that got their own grants, and then the state got a grant to cover all the areas outside of those 4 regions. And so they're going to be doing their own kind of probably much simpler dog and pony show. I think they do a webinar in each of their regions, and then they call that outreach. But we're trying to meet with everyone and roll up our sleeves, and obviously we can do more than what the state can do. So that's where it's at. So if you have any questions.
There's a lot of information you just gave us, a lot.
It's only the tip of the iceberg.
I'm trying to digest everything that he just told us.
Yeah,
is
now
an
you know why I don't
attachment
sleep
there.
too well. I'm
Okay.
trying to find the house. I'm like, all right, when's my head gonna
There,
explode?
there is an attachment in the
Okay,
packet.
I
People wanna
need
double
that
check that.
attachment to, yeah.
It is in here. It was in the packet.
What communities already have, municipal level climate action plans?
Well, so we track that, and we have part of our climate smart community grant. We have a whole metric that tracks that. And I don't know that I can tell you every single one because some are in early stages.
Plans are approved by NYSERDA?
No, they're not really approved by the other than the communities
Okay.
themselves. There's not like some requirement for this. So
Grant.
for example, Albany County has one now underway. The city of Albany has just applied to DEC to have one. And then there's various pieces of climate action planning that may not be a plan, but there are certain initiatives that essentially have been renewable energy initiatives. Take, for example, Schenectady County, and Charlie, I think we talked about this. They have this great solar initiative that they did with GE. And so there's a whole series of solar farms that have saved the county millions of dollars in energy costs. And that's an example also of just climate action planning. And all of the stuff that the whole outreach team is doing with Josh and Tara and Haley, and then the whole territory team is doing, but in our case, in the capital region, those 3 with communities under NYSERDA's program and under DEC's program, helping them to do their own operations inventory of their government operations and starting to talk about what they can do as local governments. So there's all these different places, in different places in tracking. Some are just doing baseline accounting as of now, or some are doing more thorough plans. So, and we're intending to go out and bring together with our outreach team all that information as well. So there's a lot of pieces to try to pull together, but we've been doing a lot here. We've been working with NYSERDA and DEC now. The NYSERDA grant we've been working on for 7 years. So there's been a lot of high impact actions that have been achieved that are, electric vehicles or heat pump installations in a town hall or city hall, things like that. So
after over 7 years, doing this work, what's moving, the gauge in the right direction? I mean, it's overall, I assume you're looking at our greenhouse gas. I mean, we're going down, I assume. And then what are the biggest items? Is it solar? Is it geothermal? Is it energy, electric cars?
well, it's interesting because we haven't done the updated inventory as a region to be able to determine that. So we're going to be doing an updated inventory, and then we'll be able to take our last inventory and the updated inventory and compare that. And then simultaneous to what we're doing, so not to get overcomplicated here, but we're trying to coordinate with New York State to create essentially a data portal so that all the state agencies that have data that feeds into what would go into an inventory, that it's easily accessible and could be updated by communities annually. They don't have that. So when we do an inventory, we reach out to the different state agencies, we make a request for them. What we're trying to do is, so we've been meeting individually with state agencies, and essentially then it's myself and the consultant that we're using, Climate Action Associates, on this, and trying to establish a working group of state agencies that can create these dashboards. And we've already met with the Geo Services Department, which is in IT, essentially to create what's going to be the Geo database model. And we've kind of agreed to that. Now we've brought in DMV, and we're working with them on how they can take their the tracking data that you can use for VIN numbers for vehicles. It's anonymized, but it's out now by DMV on a zip code level. That doesn't help us when we need a community-based inventory that has to be on the municipal boundary. So we've already had some meetings with them, and now DMV is moving forward, requesting the authorization to submit their data now at the municipal level. And we're going to add other DC and NYSERDA, other state agencies into that. So trying to work on that at the same time, so we can have this dashboard and we can actually have that information on a regular basis to be able to say, all right, we're having an effect or we're not having an effect, or, but we certainly have seen in lots of instances, communities save money. For example, converting their streetlights has had lots of savings to communities that have done that. Others the technology's changing. And so it gets better and better. The heat pumps are getting better with cold climate. Hopefully there'll be new battery technology that's better than the lithium batteries that we face with now. So a lot of what we're looking at here is technologically driven as well. And we need better technology, but that's slowly starting to happen.
But since we have limited resources of all kinds of resources, this kind of data will point to what's working and what's not, and where to focus
Exactly.
the energy, so that we get the benefit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the reason we focused on residential and transportation in this plan for the PCAP section is because in our existing inventory, those are the largest sectors of where our emissions are now.
Todd, if I could jump in. So one of the observations I have, and I'd like to hear your reflection on it, is that, there are all these programmatic areas and we approach them sort of as silos, right? And is there any methodology in the process that you're administering whereby we integrate the identification of, say, in this case, take a marquee geothermal project to distribute heat, to integrate that with other regional objectives in terms of where, like, are we capturing that heat in an area where we're also trying to induce economic development? Are we trying to, just use this as an example, capture that heat in an area where we're trying to create low-cost housing or workforce housing, let's say, where that could subsidize the cost of living in those houses? So, and I can go on, but it's the integration that I'm wondering
that's great thinking, because that's exactly what we're trying to do with this, is to integrate first integrating the different sustainability programs that we have, but then branching out to integrate all our different programs. I mean, when we look at whether it's water quality and the absorptive nature of green infrastructure to absorb carbon. So we're actually documenting not only reductions, but we're going to baseline and map out carbon sinks, as they're called. In other words, looking at forest preservation and green infrastructure preservation, which ties into land use planning as well. There's economic development aspects of this for certain. And I didn't get into all the details in this grant was supposed to be, Mark said 5 minutes. And, all right. But, we have a workforce development piece that we're going to work on in the second phase of this. And so we've already had some conversations with groups and then we're going to be having more of those. So that's not really the focus in the first phase, because we're looking at then the let's call it the green job sector, and tying into some of the initiative, for example, with the Port of Albany, with wind and manufacturing and the Hudson Valley Community College and other training areas that are looking at heat pump installers and things like that. So there is I think it's multifaceted in that sense. And the whole geothermal thing, it's interesting you say that. We just heard a presentation from one of the kind of brainchilds of this thing. He's the owner of a local company in Saratoga called Aztec Geothermal. And his name is John Tabacco, and he's one of these. I get to sometimes interface with some really smart people, and I try to get everything I can out of them with lots of long phone conversations and teach me about this stuff. But we had a fascinating review of all of this stuff, and that's the idea as well with the loop system, especially in the Sheraton Hollow area, is to then create lower energy costs for those buildings and to create that situation. So I think that's and it's a constant challenge. There's dictates to this program, but there's a lot of a space for creativity, which makes, for me, this fun, because it's kind of thinking up all the things, who do we have to reach out to? Like, the whole next year is gonna be, probably every week, I sit down with my team and think, who haven't we talked to yet? Let's meet. So we sent out the e-blast this past week, and we got contacted by a group, and we know a lot of these people that are doing waste diversion. And now we're gonna have a meeting with them, because we have to look at that sector and way to reduce waste and agricultural. So we're yet to reach out to the agricultural groups, but we know a lot of who they are from our water quality work.
Right, you can capture the heat from a compost pile as part of your waste diversion.
Oh,
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
so-
So it's trying to be that, right? So.
Have you, reached out to any developers? Well, our counties here as far as affordable housing and possible harnessing geothermal
So we,
aspects of it?
yeah, I mean, the problem with geothermal is it's expensive.
Very
And so that's part of the problem with some of these technologies right now, as they're kind of exclusionary in the sense that especially electric vehicles are expensive, geothermal is expensive. So we will be looking at, in this whole affordable housing partnership hub initiative,
Right.
is their focus is on how to help disadvantaged neighborhoods with their housing issues, and they're finding that heat pumps are a big challenge, and not necessarily the thing that's going to work in those neighborhoods, because for a lot of rental housing, so they don't control what their heating system is. A lot of just housing that's not airtight and needs weatherization. So their focus now is becoming more on weatherization programs for those areas to make the building envelope tighter. That's a lot of the focus. So, and I have reached out to solar developers and heat pump developers. We are looking at those, hearing from the industry as well. But again, that'll be more in the second comprehensive phase, when we can take a little more time to be thorough.
So you're figuring out where you get the most bang for your buck. Ultimately, I mean, it may not be in the future technology or the baby technology right now. You're going back a little and saying,
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when you have a conversation with residents from disadvantaged neighborhoods, right, the state and the feds kind of throw those words around,
Right.
and you wonder, well, did they ever go talk to residents in these neighborhoods? Because and then right now, there's a study that the Transportation Council is funding in Schenectady, in a poor neighborhood in Schenectady, and Dave, you're involved with that. And when you listen to the input and the needs in those neighborhoods, you know, some of the needs, besides outside of sustainability needs, right? They need good sidewalk infrastructure. They need the curbs repaired and stop parking up on this, up where the sidewalk used to be. They need tree canopies to be able to absorb rainwater and be protected from heat. They need a good, like a bus shelter to have some kind of a, dignity when taking transit and a safe way to get there. So those are all like things that are nothing to do with technology.
Yeah, it's kind of like stabilizing
Yeah.
the environment
That's-
before you jump.
That's
in
the
with
integration,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
that's needed.
But I've gone way more than 5
Yeah.
minutes.
Clearly, we're all very
Yeah.
interested in this,
Right.
and it sounds that in April, you have to make a submission for project funding, right? That,
Well, the project applicants have to. We're not, I don't think
We
we
can't-
want to
we
do
can't have
that.
a fund
I mean, if somebody
for-
said, does CDRPC want to do major multi-million-dollar infrastructure implementation project? And
No.
I think we'll do the plan and let the municipal groups that do implementation funding step up with their ideas. And that probably is a better way than creating a juvenile detention facility like authority to do a major I don't think we're going there.
Not again.
No.
it'd be interesting, give an idea that we know, like just geothermal, larger projects like at Sheridan Hollow or other places are there, and we all know it's gonna cost more if there was some kind of fund. I don't know if, rather than one project, just so, we can go out and talk to different communities and say, this is available, but more to come on this.
Mhm.
I appreciate your efforts.
Thanks.
And we'll keep you updated on it. All right, now we have a presentation from Kate Maynard, just to give us a recap of this year's Future Leaders in Planning Program.
Get through here. Thank you. So I'm gonna take Todd's idea and get to the spots. You don't seem to do questions or anything. Thanks, Mark. And Mark's just gonna flip through. I thought I'd give you some visuals so you can come along our Future Leaders in Planning program that was offered this year. As a quick reminder and a new entry for our newer board members, FLIP is a program that we actually created back in 2019. Excuse me, 2019. Excuse me. And this is our 4th year of offering the program. Mark, if you wouldn't mind just flipping through, thank you. So this is a snapshot of this year's class. We held the program at ETech. So our partner at University of Albany, Geography and Planning, we're able to get that space free of charge, which is fantastic. And then we were able to make site visits, you'll see in the pictures to follow, locations in the city of Troy, Albany, Saratoga Springs, and including South End within the city of Albany. Students this year were from a cross section of different districts. So what we've strived to do is really reach kids who are coming from different backgrounds, different genders, et cetera, from rural, suburban, and urban school districts. We have found that has been a great partnership with our Clean Tech program, which is up in Saratoga County. They are our initial partner and they continue to be a wonderful partner with us. What we have found is that it is a bit of a challenge. We did a lot of outreach this past year with our past intern, and we tried to create new avenues to get students involved. And I would say that's still one of our surprise challenges, is getting students connected and attending the program. So I definitely flag that as, we're an award-winning program. We just won a President's Award from University of Albany for exemplary public engagement. People love this program. Partners love this program. They honestly, I'm not trying to do this, but they literally queue up to be involved, which is fantastic and exciting. Students, once they take the program, highly rate it. They love it. But getting them in the door, as my husband says, you're asking them to go to school for a week in the summertime. I guess it's a little perspective, but once they get there, they honestly love it. So I'm just flipping through. So what I've done is, instead of just put a lot of bullets for you, I wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the different things that we do with the kids throughout the week. So this is one of the introductory activities we do, which is a bingo. We have found through FLIP, the more they are active and learning on the fly about urban planning, economic development, open space conservation, workforce development, how to engage and be involved in their communities, the better. So this is one example of what they were able to do and get engaged in terms of what planning is, and then what they were going to see and be involved in throughout the week. There we go, we're slowly flipping through. This is at the South End, so the South End grocery store. In this particular example, students learned how to utilize a drone. So we try to integrate technology and what's new in the field, what are tools that they may be using, and really give them a hands-on experience throughout. There we go.
Okay, these are 11th graders?
They are rising juniors and seniors. So we've also discussed that quite a bit, which is what is the right age? We have had some inquiries for, say, students who are going into 7th or 8th grade. Anyone who has kids or remembers those days, there's a lot of difference between a senior in high school and a 7th or 8th grader. So for now, we've tried to keep kind of the ages similar. Socially, just kind of all those things that we remember from high school. So that's worked pretty well, and as well as in terms of the program aspect. This is the city of Troy. We added some new partners this year. So we have financial sponsorship that's provided by CTA. They provide a lot of our transportation. The Transportation Council, Albany Geography and Planning provides not only the e-tech space, they've assisted with programming in the past. They also provide some monetary support. This year we added a private sponsor, MJ Engineering. So they put in funding towards the overall program. And then we also applied for and received, thanks to Mark, a $2,500 grant from APA, the American Planning Association. So all that really helps keep this program low cost, really a high touch program. So again, the goal is similar to STEM program that you might see or other approaches to really engage students early. We just immerse them in all things planning. This is an exercise here, Jen Saponis from the Transportation Council and an area architect from Labella. They're doing a complete streets exercise. So students went out and actually audited an intersection. And one student said she would never see crosswalks the same. So we feel like we're having really one way or another, guys. We're hopefully having an impact. So students are highly engaged, and we're also looking for what future examples or activities might be. We've had other professional organizations reach out, Could we take the students and mentor them in some way in planning in different ways? We're trying to build that pipeline continually. What might be internships, mentoring, shadowing opportunities. UAlbany is obviously very interested in terms of the pipeline for academic to maybe go for either certification or through undergrad or graduate programming for planning or other studies. Exactly. This is UPH up in Saratoga Springs. So what was interesting, a lot of the students don't know these locations. Some hadn't been to the city of Troy. Many hadn't been to, this is the Universal Preservation Hall. This is a church that was remodeled and now hosts a whole variety of arts, cultural, comedian shows, events over the year. So this is the head of that, Teddy Foster, showcasing what the space does and what students could partake in, as well as sustainability and historic preservation, et cetera. The students this year for their program, each year they do a program, or excuse me, project. They did Reimagining 787. We went big this year. So very timely conversation.
There's merch, you had a hat on?
Oh, yeah, and there's merch.
There's
Yeah.
merch.
So we were able to get the hats. I'm glad you noticed that. Good eye. This is a design that was actually built on from our former intern, Amanda Diaz, and kind of has grown throughout. So there's really kind of like that organic growth nature of the flow program. So a lot of people have had their input and really kind of their mark on the program. Each year we tweak and revise where we see kind of ways to do that, as well as keeping and maybe having shine even further the parts that really work of Flip. So that's kind of hopefully a good visual for all of you. Is there any questions that I can answer about this year?
How do we track what these students are doing in subsequent years?
We
It's a
don't.
classic question, I think, right? Just in general.
Well, it'd be interesting to know, what they,
Afterwards,
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
during their steps of the program.
well, no, I mean, like, so most of these are what, high school juniors, is
High
that?
school juniors are seniors, so they're
Right.
rising. They're
So
becoming-
that'd be interesting to track year to year what their pursuits are, vocational or academic, and
It'd be great for an intern to maybe just call up the first
Yeah.
class and say, what are you
Yeah.
doing now?
words.
Participate in anything as a citizen? Are you working in the field?
Yeah,
Always in a benefit.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
yeah.
I think he's asking.
And I think end of the day is broad. And we even say to the students, what's the purpose of this week? And what do we hope you're going to get from it, as well as what you will on your own get from this experience? So it could be that early next step in terms of, I'm interested in attending this in my community. It might be academic pursuits or what they might think of for careers. But there's also kind of that deeper kind of long-term kind of side of it too. Laying the groundwork. These might be future planning board members. This might be a future IDA chair. I mean, just to kind of draw out what
That's what I'm,
you really can't stop. So it would be a multi-year process.
Sure, but
I
it's-
think that'd be a great idea to
yeah,
track
but it's a
it.
finite group, so it's.
Oh, effective.
it's
You
gonna be
wonder where they
interesting.
are now from the first class.
Yeah, what's
Yeah, I just know
the
that.
long
Yeah,
term,
absolutely.
what's the longer term impact
Yes.
of them having
Yeah.
participated?
When you first started the blending,
Mhm.
what was its goal
The goal
at the start of it? Anyway?
at the start of it was really a first touch program. So it was really designing an experience where students generally weren't coming into contact with planning, economic development, civic engagement in a
Yeah.
concrete way. So it was to create that first touch of really a broader world of what might be career or it might be civic engagement opportunities.
It's an exposure they don't get in the classroom.
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah, it's really well put.
One of my questions too, you have a maximum number of participants every year? You probably said this before. but-
No, that's okay. One thing we have is it's probably by design 25 or less. We also have some physical caps. So for example, CDT's bike share program and some of our transportation opportunities. Plus just how it operates because it is, students are getting a chance to engage with community leaders. They're able to have one-on-one time and have questions and have someone explain something in a very smaller group dynamic way. So I'd say 25 is generally what we're looking for as a cap.
Max, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good number, yeah.
How do they get to the different communities?
That is where our partners come in.
Oh, okay.
So CDTA has been a wonderful sponsor, so they provide free transportation for us. We've tried to kind of minimize the impact or I ask of them So this year, through some of the funding we were able to receive, we were able to work with UAlbany and use some of their transportation options. So it was kind of a cross section, wherever we can, we do one location and we'll walk and bike.
Yeah.
So they learn too about transportation options and utilize those as part of the learning. And we're always blessed by really good weather too. I don't know how that happens, but each year, I stress and I think, is this gonna work out okay? What's our backup plans? And we're lucky.
No.
So hopefully that
This year.
Nice.
I know, we really dodged the rain somehow this year, so it's great. We may be looking at different formats, so part of what we talked about, the difficulty in pipeline for students, et cetera. One thing we're talking about Clean Tech is there an opportunity to work in the programming throughout the year? So instead of having a week in the summer, for example, I was kind of brainstorming with someone else about, maybe it's a Friday per month and they're learning in a different way, but that kind of streamlines our process as well as minimizes some of the costs of transportation if we can rely on each school to provide those items. So we're kind of shifting if we need to a different format, based on what we're looking to deliver. There's also an opportunity for growth. So we thought about breaking out into themes. So for example, students more interested in transportation, maybe a transportation program, another one based on sustainability, another more on economic development or say downtown revitalization. So there's different ways we can grow the program depending on our partners' needs.
How do the school systems support your flip, if at all?
They're not directly supporting it right now beyond Clean Tech. Again, what this past year we tried to do is grow our outreach and kind of get to the direct liaisons with the students. So that was one goal we had. I've had some schools like the city of Schenectady, they were interested in creating their own flip program. So we kind of said, well, we're not, first of all, we don't have the staff time to do that right now. This is a small part of what I do. So we kind of left it as a conversation potentially for the future. But that's something that I think we're kind of, because this is so, I think, unique and on its own, we're kind of crafting as we go, how it is best deployed. We'd love to build more relationships with school districts. So we do have a lot of people who are speaking on its behalf in each district.
Getting back to following up on prior participants to see what they're doing could help yourselves part of it.
Yeah, I like that idea. I am going to meet with Clean Tech soon. We kind of took a little break after all the work.
Yeah.
So we'll start planning again for this next year, whatever it may consist of. So that's a good thing to add in. I know they'll be interested in what comes out of it as well and tracking the students. So that's a great idea.
So Kate, the participant, they don't get any kind of academic credit for this, do they? For high school?
No, although that is one thing we thought that maybe that's a carrot to offer. So that was something that actually the Clean Tech administrator had mentioned when we were kind of brainstorming ideas. If there'd be a way, because their students get it, it checks a box for their particular program. But to your point, if there's a way we can get students some credit,
That would really
that might,
the interest.
it may, yeah, get them to go to school and stuff.
You know, it's a great program. I've sat in on a couple of their panels to evaluate kids' project, and if you ever get a chance to attend one of those, it's a real hands-on growth.
Yeah.
Not only for the kids, but the panelists. I mean, I've gone in there, I've had other panelists that I always heard about, never talked to them, so it was a growth experience
That's great.
for us also.
Yeah.
You're doing the right thing, Kate.
Thank you. It's great to hear.
I'd love to see the schools give release time, for the students. Every Friday for so many weeks, you're gonna be part of this and you're not gonna, it's not gonna be time missed from school. It's gonna be
Yeah.
additional.
I think there's something there.
So challenging.
It is,
Yeah.
I get
Has
it. If anyone
their-
knows context, please let me know.
Yeah.
We've really
Yeah.
grown a lot of these contexts.
Maybe guidance counselors, just if they recognize somebody who might be interested. Look, if you're not getting credit, it also looks good on your resume, your college application.
absolutely.
So it might just be like,
Yeah.
give me your kids who've expressed interest in civic
Yeah.
and government, give me your kids who you know, might now be seen as trouble, but maybe that's because they're, feel they need to be involved and.
You going to the youth center?
Make a change.
Environmental justice, things like that.
Wow.
Craig went there. We took that approach this past year, but we had all the superintendents buy-in. I went to many regional superintendents meetings.
Yeah.
School superintendents were literally fighting over spots.
Mhm.
Like, oh, well, I mean, our school district has this many units. It's like, well, wait a minute. And then it didn't translate into actual applications. So you're right. We went that route of trying to connect with direct liaisons like guidance counselors and teachers. So we put a lot of
No,
stuff.
I know you
into
probably
that.
thought of all already.
No, I'm not saying there's always room for more movement, but that's why we're kind of having the sense there might be a different tack we need to take.
Yeah.
Just to really get the kids already ready and into the program and not spend our time doing that.
Good.
Mm.
All right, any
If anyone's
other
interested in
questions?
being on the panel next year, let me know.
I would
Happy to
suggest
present.
that.
It is a lot of fun. Usually it's great just seeing what students come up with. It's very inspiring in a way, just seeing what's in their brains and what they take from the week and put it together in their own way. It's really
And it keeps us young too.
You know, that too.
What makes you think we're getting any older?
No, I'm just me.
It's just you.
He has to be immature.
Learn from your elder.
Thank you, Kate.
Great.
And,
Thanks for the time.
story map.
All right. So I just wanted to quickly give an example of some of the new data products that we're developing. This is a story map. Story maps are a new wave in terms of GIS and data visualization. So you may have encountered a story map on the New York Times or other online news outlets. So we have worked for many years with the Transportation Council down the hall, and we were tasked this year with transforming what we had typically done for them, which is doing a sort of map set and giving them a bunch of data as a prelude to their regional transportation plan and putting a different flavor on that. And so Madison Hrisco, our GIS person, worked with a small team here to put together what will be the story map that will serve as an introduction of the regional transportation plan to various stakeholders across the region. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. And as story maps go, you scroll to interact with them. This introduction here starts to tell the story about numbers of trips, miles of lanes that we travel, traffic signals, 98 million trips across the Hudson River, 16.5 million hours sitting in traffic, 51 million tons of goods brought in through the port, 14 million people using the airport. So this, basically is setting the context for the story that they want to tell. This interactive feature up here has obviously menu navigations to different sections. This includes the context of our region's history. We also have robust data visualizations in here. These data visualizations are created in both ArcGIS and in Tableau. So this quickly shows the population change that our region has experienced over the past 10 years. The maps are also interactive. This is the age cohort projections. I'm going to zoom into some of the more compelling visualizations. This just shows the change in our region's population of the 60 plus, 65 plus population, increase in one-person households. So all things that we need to consider as we think about our transportation network. This shows our region by race and ethnicity. And again, you can scroll through these things. This map takes, this is a really cool visualization. It shows race and ethnicity by census tract, and then overlays that the historic redlining that happened in our cities. So the red areas show where the red lines were and the other areas. And you can clearly see that there's an overlap between how our cities are today and where they were redlined in the past. So it includes a lot of information.
How do we know where the red lines were?
An organization took the old Sanborn maps and digitized them for anyone to use. So these are the actual lines digitized that were on the Sanborn maps for Schenectady, Albany, and Troy.
A red line in terms of lack of availability for
The term, Want to just,
Go for it.
you want me to?
Sure.
I can do it. Do you want me to?
Go ahead, Todd tells the story better than
I
me.
mean,
So in the
mortgage financing.
Yeah, 1930s to jumpstart the economy during the Depression under FDR, they created a homeowners loan corporation,
Okay.
which was like a federally funded appraisers group, and they sent them out to map all the cities in the country and they had a color coding and an associated description of neighborhoods that would meet one of those categories. And they were explicitly racist, and they marked communities that had Black residents or even like Southern European residents, Italian, Jewish. These would be places where the federal government would not back mortgages once the federal government started to back private mortgages, and those became places of disinvestment because they wouldn't back them.
So those red lines were actually literally on a map.
They were on a
This
map.
is not interpretive data. This
Yeah,
was,
so bankers would use that and say.
I got it. I mean, I understood the concept, but I never knew that.
That's good.
That was actually physically,
Real life thing.
that it wasn't, you derived it from the patterns. Okay.
Crazy.
The street, yes, that street.
Mhm.
That's
You know,
really
Is it
one comment on that. I lived in Albany when I was really young. I grew up mostly in the town of Colonnade, but when I was really young, we lived in Albany in what was then the Polish neighborhood. And it was was redlined, but it was not a minority neighborhood back then. It was a white Polish neighborhood. A lot of the neighborhoods that are now minority in Albany, right up through the early sixties, were Polish or German or whatever. I had to take Polish as a mandatory second language in first grade.
So there's one household that would trigger the whole drag.
Have we redefined minorities since then now? You know, what was the definition of a minority in
Yeah, I don't know.
1930? It was different than it is today.
Yeah.
They were more prejudiced then.
Yes, well, I would say
They were
so,
more
yeah.
prejudiced.
Yeah.
Well, there's another layer to this that we don't have the information on. It's not on that map, but I was always intrigued by it is restrictive covenants. So that was like another layer of like in the places
Yeah.
where the federal government was backing mortgages, which is essentially the suburbs. There were restrictive covenants that prohibited the sale of houses to like Black residents, and they're really widespread, but I don't know that anyone's ever like gone to the deeds in the capital region and looked to see if like where that played out. I don't know that that's something we want to do, but it's just part of the story as well.
So there's a lot of data here. Great to have it on this website. Anything?
No, this is just, again, is intended to be the introduction to the issues that will be tackled by the regional transportation plan. And it's intended to provide adequate context to the planning process that is going to be starting shortly.
And this is readily available to anybody on the internet at this point?
This is still in draft. So once it's approved by the Transportation Council down the hall, they will make it public and we'll share it broadly.
Where
It's
would
really
that
on our website
be? On our website, their site is where?
It lives in our ArcGIS portal. So we can just put a link anywhere we want to. I would anticipate to support the regional transportation
I
plan.
think this.
We put a button on our website
Really,
to
it's
show.
right, it's right.
No, go ahead.
It's really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a powerful assimilation of information that we may want to jointly do like a joint press release and programmatic outreach with CRTC.
It's our first foray into this kind of presentation. So it's a learning process and we're really trying to balance how much information we include versus, versus our audience. So
Well, the nice thing about it is you can include a lot of information in it, more than people want or need.
they can just skip by it.
Yeah.
But it
They can
invites.
take what they want though.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it invites on a personal level. Questions and analysis and thoughts, so it's very powerful. Great work.
Good. All credit to Madison and the folks from the Transportation Council. It's a fun project to work on. That's it.
Great work. Any questions on that? Run the staff report.
So staff report highlights the lots of work that we've been doing since January. We haven't given you a staff report, just a couple highlights that we have not yet mentioned during the meeting. We are still working on our broadband funded work for Schenectady and Rensselaer counties. We did encounter a hiccup. You can see all the different data news articles that we produced and the jazz work that we've done, the highlights and updates for our sustainability program, land use program, FLIP programs, our economic development portfolio. We did an economic impact analysis or assessment tool for transportation projects. One thing that is not included or is included at the end, which has been taking a lot of my time, is the construction project at Secure Detention. There's just an update for the past couple months. That project is proceeding apace. We have the walls and roofs up for the 3 primary additions to that facility. And we anticipate that phase 1 construction will be completed by Q1 of 24. That will allow the use to move into a new wing so that we can start the interior demolition on the rest of the project. But staff's been doing great work. They continue to do great work, and all thanks to them for their commitment to CDRPC.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business? If I can have the privilege of for 1 second, I have an interesting experience. Last week, I was in Dublin. It was Monday last week. It was the day before we left to come home, and my wife, we were in a shopping center, and my wife was looking at souvenir jewelry, little like clotted earrings for different people. So I naturally wandered away, and there was a little kiosk that had CBD products. So don't draw any conclusions, but I wandered over there and I started speaking to one of the younger people who was running it, and he asked where I was from, blah, blah, blah. And I said, the Albany area. He goes, I went to high school in the Albany area. And where? And he said, Berkshire Farm. And so he told me just a powerful story of how Berkshire Farm, he says, saved his life. That he was on that path. He had the alternative to incarceration, and he's living a fruitful and entrepreneurial life now.
Good.
So, but I wrote his name down on a scrap of paper. I gotta find the scrap of paper now. But I just wanted to share that with everybody, because it's, it's always those, not the statistical information, but the real granular information that has the powerful impact.
We should have a meeting
Make sure that
sometime
gets
where we
back
bring
to
people
Berkshire.
like that in to speak.
That's what I was
People who've gone
thinking.
through
That's why I took
the
his name.
FLIP program and where they are now, or somebody who went through,
Exactly.
like that, and just tell us where they are and, the good that came from it.
Because there might be a lot of them that would really be open to that,
yeah.
because they would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know.
this individual certainly was. He was very forthcoming about, the path he was on in a gang in Brooklyn and where he is now.
It gets back to that tracking
Yeah.
element, like
Right.
how effective
Right.
is this really
Yeah,
gonna be?
that's right. Same concept.
And you don't ever hear about it.
They do support great work. They've graduated 5 students from high school last year, and they're going to graduate 1 this week from high school. So they definitely do great work. We should all actually go to Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but- Just be careful. I had my cell phone picked up.
So one other thing I wanted to mention, we have our planning and zoning workshop on Friday. We have more than 140 people registered. So it should be a good turnout, again, partnering with the New York Planning Federation to make that happen this year.
And that's on site, right?
Not Hudson Valley Community College, Friday.
Are there classes over there at Hudson Valley then? Are we gonna have parking problems or?
I don't think there's gonna be parking problems. Amy, did they say anything about parking?
They did not say anything about parking problems.
Problem.
No.
You shouldn't have a problem.
No, there's plenty of parking.
Right.
Yeah, we start before the students wake up, so. we should-
Yeah, they're still hungover. Oh,
There's not a lot there on Friday. It's a
Yeah.
Thursday, never mind. Oh, it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, no, the meeting's a Friday. The
Course.
conference is a Friday, but I was thinking they're still hungover, but no,
Oh.
Thursday.
Or they were out studying that night.
Right, they were out studying all night, yeah.
All right, next committee meeting, commission meeting, excuse me, with December 13th.
Yeah.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And we are closed out. Thank